I'm Jenna.
I'm Hayden.
And today we're going to be doing a quick ACT English last minute review, otherwise known as the most common mistakes and or the things we want you to remember most about ACT English while you're taking the test. So the numbers are a little messed up on here, but just bear with us. We're going to go kind of just in order of the most important topics, basically. So number one is one-word transitions. Make sure to know the main categories of transitions and memorize some examples. So if you've done English with us before, you know that one of our favorite practice exercises, Hayden's about to talk about it, is sorting more complex transitions into three categories. One being addition, which is continuation or elaboration of a thought. Contrast, which is introducing a conflicting point or idea, and causation, which is indicating a relationship where one causes the other. So and, but, or so. Just make sure to review these three categories and kind of know which words belong where.
So these, when Jenna was talking about memorizing words in our favorite practice exercise, this is what you're going to be doing in that practice exercise. This is what your answer key looks like for that. It has all the words in the correct categories. So I'm not going to read all these to you. You can read these through, but just a couple from the and category. Moreover, likewise, for more, our buts, our contrast words, things like instead, nevertheless, nonetheless. So our causation category can be anything like subsequently, therefore, as such, those like kind of the because words too. Those are all our categories.
And this is something that's obviously not like a grammatical rule or anything, but we just want to remind you not to avoid the answer no change. A lot of people have like a negative feeling, like don't like this answer choice because I think you always have to change something on the ACT. You can't just keep it as is. But no change is just as likely to be correct as the other three answer choices. So if you're feeling super confident that it's no change, make sure you pick that answer. Like it says here, it has a 25% chance of being correct. This is the same thing as when questions have an omit or delete answer choice. The same rules apply. Don't avoid it. If you're sure that it's correct, pick it. Trust your gut on that one. Don't shy away from those answers.
Another mistake that people make is glossing over the question and passage. I cannot stress how important it is to read the entire passage, the entire question, know exactly what the question is asking for so you don't get it wrong. You want to start, like I said, read the entire passage. It can be easy. It is a fast-paced test, and if you're new to timing and working on that, it can be easy to just see that there's an underlined portion, just jump right to that, and then just kind of answer it from the little area around it. But what's so important on the ACT is the context around those underlined portions. Don't risk it, don't play games, just read the whole passage so you don't risk that happening. Make sure you read the entire question so you know what it's asking and what to look for. Don't just like kind of see like what it's asking. Don't guess what it's asking. Really ask yourself. We give a lot of examples throughout all of our videos of like not just the topic that we're teaching, but what kind of questions to look for that topic. So if you read the question, you can know what topic you're dealing with and then already kind of have an idea of how to answer it. You also want to make sure you read each answer choice and how it affects each sentence. One might look right, and you might think that could be the one, but maybe the one at the bottom that had like just has a difference of having an S or not having an S on one word can be the difference between the right and wrong answer. So make sure you just read everything.
Yes. Okay, so jumping back to some grammar rules, commas are all over the English section. They are super important, and we love to just make you memorize, as you should, when never to use a comma. So commas, like it says here, act as a pause when reading, but there are a few places where you should never put a comma, no matter what. The first is between a subject and a verb. For example, John walked to the store. John is my subject, walked is my verb. We don't need a pause there, so we wouldn't want to put a comma in between those two things. Second is no comma between a verb and its object. For example, Katie threw the ball. Threw is my verb. Threw what? Ball. So ball is my direct object. We don't want to pause in between those two, so you should never put a comma there. Number three is between a preposition and its object. So John walked to the store. To is my preposition. To what? The store. Store is my direct object. Once again, we don't need a pause there, so we wouldn't put a comma. Number four is between prepositional phrases. For example, John walked over the hill to the store. We have two prepositional phrases there. We don't need a pause there, so we wouldn't want to put a comma. This one's kind of difficult because when you're reading in your head or when you're talking out loud, sometimes you would pause in between those prepositional phrases. So just remember, it's not grammatically correct. I like to say, as a rule of thumb, try to avoid commas around or within prepositional phrases. Number five, before a prepositional phrase at the end of an independent clause. Like I was saying, just try to avoid commas around prepositional phrases. This one's a specific situation, and we make note of it here because, like between prepositional phrases, When you're reading it mentally or when you're speaking, sometimes you would pause here. She made no noise as she trotted through the snow. However, it's not grammatically correct. You can't put a comma there.
To continue that thought about inserting too many commas is number 6, between two things. Now, two things can be a lot of things. It can be two items in a list, such as this one. They are actually a testament to the tree's remarkable genetics and adaptability. Two verbs, like a compound predicate, if I can think of it that way. The chemicals need to absorb nitrogen and keep above 20 degrees. Two subjects, the speaker and musicians began to tune. Or two objects, Myers wrote an award-winning essay and a full-length novel. So when you get to 3 or more things, that's a different story. Then you'll be using commas, whatever. But if you can only count 2, just remember you do not need a comma in those situations.
So moving on with some grammar rules, we're going to talk about incorrectly punctuating independent clauses. So just to review, we have 2 types of clauses, independent and dependent. Independent clauses have a subject and a verb and can stand alone, while dependent clauses, although they do also have a subject and a verb, cannot stand alone. So there are a few ways to join 2 independent clauses. The first is just a period. So independent clause, period, independent clause. For example, the power went out, period, Al couldn't watch TV. Those are 2 independent clauses that can stand alone, and we can join them correctly with a period. The second is a semicolon. So you could also say the power went out, semicolon, Al couldn't watch TV. It's important to remember that this is the only use of a semicolon you're going to see on the ACT. So if you're thinking about using that semicolon in an answer choice, make sure what you have both before and after that semicolon are independent clauses. And finally, you can also join 2 independent clauses with a comma fanboys. So for example, the power went out, comma, so Al couldn't watch TV. It's important to remember here that if you're going to use this method, it has to be a fanboy. So for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. You cannot use any other word, otherwise it's going to be incorrect.
So now you know how to combine 2 independent clauses, but when we're combining an independent and dependent clause, if that independent clause comes first and the dependent clause follows it, you do not need any punctuation between the 2. Al couldn't watch TV because the power went out, no need for a pause there. However, if you switch it, then you do need a comma between the 2. Because the power went out, Al couldn't watch TV. Some common errors, probably the 2 most common errors that we see with joining clauses are comma splices and run-on sentences. A comma splice is placing a comma in between 2 independent clauses. Remember the 3 ways to join, period, semicolon, comma, fanboys. A comma by itself is not one of those. It's just not right. Don't ever do that one. Also, don't do a run-on sentence, and that's where you just have no punctuation between 2 complete sentences. Again, there are 3 correct ways to combine clauses. Use those, not either of these.
Okay, and we just want to remind you of the process we like to follow with apostrophe questions, just because they can get confusing. So, to answer an apostrophe question, follow these steps. Number 1, identify possession. Do you even have possession here? If you don't, you're not going to need to use an apostrophe. And what I mean by identify possession is see if you have an owner and an object. Do you have something taking ownership of something else? If you don't have possession. However, if you can identify that owner and object, then you do have possession. Like here in our example, man's feet, the feet belong to the men or the man. We don't know yet, so we know we do have possession. Owner is man's, object is feet. Okay, and number 2, once you recognize possession, you need to take your owner and put it in original form. What we mean by original form is, okay, is your owner singular or plural? In this case, is there one man or many men? And this is really helpful to use context here. So like we said before, make sure you read everything because context is going to be key here. In this sentence, we have the soldier. The soldier tells us that there's one man. So in this case, it should be the original form of our owner man's would be man.
The third step is to apply the S rule, and this is just if the word ends in S, all you do is tack an apostrophe on after that word. So if we have like James, and James is possessing something, to make it James's, we just add that apostrophe at the end. If it does not add an S, just add that apostrophe S on, like turkey becomes turkeys. So if we go back to our example sentence, the soldier rests in the hall, spotlights lit up the man feet. We know that man, we're going to tack on that apostrophe S, so it becomes man's, and we have the correct form of man, apostrophe S, feet, man's feet, and that one is correct and done.